beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. Within this video I have some very interesting information and a good look at the forthcoming BrewZilla Gen 4 that is part of a webinar broadcast in Norway. My thanks go out to the Brewing company for permission to share this footage with you. Within this video footage you will find information in relation to release dates for the 35 litre, 65 litre and 100 litre Gen 4 units, Brewfather compatibility, the RAPT system, as well as a look at the Generation 4 unit design compared to the previous generation. So let's get started.
Yep.
So release dates.
The BrewZilla Gen 4, I think one of the major things we're waiting on now, I think, is the CE approvals. So generally what we do is in Australia, when we release a product, it comes to Australia first. So we get all the Australian approvals. And then usually after we've got all the Australian approvals and everything gets ticked off, then we start the CE approvals and also the UL approvals and the SAA, and there's a long list of approvals. Basically, every country's got their different. For South America, it's one of these days we just all need to get together in all the countries and universalize the approval process, because it's sort of very, very similar, but then there's little small differences. It's kind of annoying. Yeah. And sometimes it can pull us up. Like if we ship something into Canada, they've got like a different system where you need to show approvals on the component level as well as the whole appliance level, and it's sort of really frustrating with things like that. We're constantly sort of, having to sort of read through standards and stuff like that. But anyway, I think the CE approval should be done really soon. I think Lydia in the China office might have been speaking to Shell about that, so I can't remember what she told you.
We actually had a possibility now to order it. So hopefully, regarding ETA to Norway, I would say we should be able to sell the Gen 4. And that is the 35 and the 65 in August, September, I would say, is probably.
Yeah, good one.
And then, that's fantastic. Regarding the 100 litres, I guess you know more.
Yeah, the 100 litre we've still got to finish off, because the first the first elements weren't quite big enough, and we ended up making it a little bit. We changed the dimension to make it a little bit wider. We just noticed that with there's a relationship between the optimum height of the mash tun to the diameter, and we were noticing with the 100 litre, with the first one, it was just like the malt pipe was getting too deep, causing us sort of a few problems with the flow through. So we decided to go through the painstaking process of going larger diameter on that one. So if you look at the different sizes, the 35 is kind of quite tall. The 65 is more or less the same height or very slightly taller, and the 100 litres sort of very wide and squat. And really that's because of the dynamics of how the wort flows through the malt pipe, I suppose. But yeah, the 100 litre is pretty awesome. It's kind of funny. We're getting a lot of questions about that, even from home brewers. It's become a very grey line with home brewers, because like home brewers used to be, oh yeah, you're doing a small batch. And then if you've got a commercial business, you're doing a very big batch. And that line has been so grey now, because we've got like home brewers brewing bigger batches than some commercial brewers, and some commercial brewers doing even smaller batches than a lot of home brewers. So it's funny, when we sort of started talking about the 100 litre, I thought, oh yeah, we'll hardly sell any of those, and maybe like, a few a year or something like that. But as we've sort of got closer and closer to the finish line with that one, I think, I'll be surprised if we don't sell quite a few of those. I think probably we'll see like still probably something like 60% of the sales in the 35, and then it'll be 30%, but it'll still be something like 20% or something like that, or 10 or 20% like that of our total overall BrewZilla sales will be in the 100 litre, which is still quite sizable.
We have a lot of questions regarding the 100 litres. There's a lot of people that are waiting for that.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through the main differences between Gen 4 and 311?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Like one of the things that we wanted to change was the way that the pump worked and the plumbing on the base of the brewery. So if we look at the bottom of the brewery, we have like the base here, which you can see, and as you can see how there's no cover on the bottom anymore. Basically, you just tip it upside down, so you can get access to the pump really easily. So some people, plumbing, for instance, so at the moment we've got the pump configuration, so it comes out of the bottom dead center of the boiler and then feeds directly into the pump, and then that pump feeds to the tap on the side here. So the tap is now below the element actually. So previously the tap was up above here. So then you would have to then open the tap and it wouldn't drain everything out. Now you can drain everything out just using gravity, on the tap. So for washing, that's also kind of handy because generally by the time you're washing your brewery, you've already unplugged it from the power. In which case you want everything to drain out completely, and especially once you start getting to the bigger breweries, like the 100-litre in particular, that starts to get a bit awkward to turn upside down and drain it and tip everything out. And a lot of the time you're only tipping out that tiny little bit of liquid there. So what we've done in all of the Gen 4s is have the dish base. So the dish in the base of it in the middle is shaped like a dish. It's sort of hard to tell in the camera there, but maybe take my word for it, but it's shaped like a dish like this, so everything drains out completely. Now, that was sort of quite complicated because we make our elements a little bit different to some of the other breweries out there which have a dish base. We fuse ours to the stainless steel, so we don't use like a thermal paste and bolts to bolt anything on. It's fused on there, which means that it's quite tricky. You have to basically make sure the base is punched and the tooling for the casting are made quite precisely because the tolerance of where they'll fuse together has to be really, really tight, a perfect match. But yeah, by having that type of configuration on the base, it means that what we can do is we can, for instance, upgrade the pump. So on the 65 and 100 litre, there's upgradable pump options. So if you want to go for a larger pump and pump out quicker, we've had some people who were using, like, for instance, plate chillers, for instance, and they have typically quite a lot more resistance when you try to pump through them. So the small 6-watt pump in the 65-litre brewery, some people they're struggling to get a fast flow rate. So now, even for things like the 65-litre brewery, you can upgrade the pump, just unscrew the pump in there, and then put the new larger, 25-watt pump in there, and then you're going to get like 4 times the flow rate. So things like that are kind of cool as well. The screen now sort of tilts up. Some people found that the screen used to be like near the bottom of the boiler, but now it's on this sort of holder here. So you can take it off and look at it in your hands like this, but you can also tilt it up. So that way you're not like kneeling on the ground to be able to see what's going on. So that's sort of a nice thing. The malt pipe's larger as well. So with the malt pipe, actually I might share my screen rather than pick everything up.
Yeah,
sort of like a little bit easier actually. I'll just do this. So yeah, I think you should be able to see my screen now. So I'll just pull up some of the Gen 4 photos here. Just give us 1 second. So that's the Gen 4 here. Yeah, as you can see, the screen now is on this little tilt mechanism. So you basically just have these bolts here like that, and then the screen will basically move in and out. So then you can tilt it up or down, as I was saying before. And that's the pump configuration on the underside. And also this is the dish base here. Let me just show you this here. Yeah, so can you guys see that okay, actually?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It's just your wife is talking in the chat and making of us. Saying you're looking good for waking up at 4:45.
So this is the base of the of the boiler now. So as you can see, that's the dish base, and we've reduced this gap here a lot. So this used to be, how I was saying this tap has moved below. So this tap here has moved below the element. That means that instead of having the tap here, because as soon as we put the tap on the wall, it means that we had to move this false screen up quite a bit. And then we have to move this false screen up a bit. So this whole false screen here, if we move that up by 1 inch, then we have to move this up by, the whole malt pipe has to be quite a bit smaller. And then the compounding effect was quite large in the sense that means we had a much smaller malt pipe, and just, you couldn't. So now we can do stronger beers, we can do bigger beers, and we've got other add-ons. For instance, like, have you guys seen our boiler extension where you put it on the top of the boiler and you can extend the boil volume? So you can actually do more beer as well. So some people using the 35-litre brewery, adding on the malt pipe extension on top here, and boiling like 40 or 45 litres of beer, in the single, the 35-litre BrewZilla. So you could sort of get away with that, and you can make really strong beers, especially now that you've got this, larger malt pipe. But the other thing, and the flip side of it, is that it can also do smaller batches too. So if you're we're getting an increasing number of customers who also want to do really small batches, like 5 or 10 litres, and by having the malt pipe get closer to the element at the base, we don't have to put anywhere near as much liquid in here. So, we can still have only like a kilo of grain and effectively mash that with the malt pipe in a fully lowered position, because normally if you tried to do a kilo, you'd have to add a lot of water, and it just would be a very low gravity beer trying to brew that beer. So, it's kind of funny. It gives us the flexibility to not only do larger batches, but also do smaller batches out of the same brewery. So that's kind of nice.
How many kilos, Kee, do you think you could put into a 35 now of malt?
Oh, that's something I should know off the top of my head. I think we get on the previous malt pipe, sort of round about. I better not say specifically, because I don't have the exact answer. I've never actually pushed it to the absolute limit myself. Look, if Oliver was in the office, I'd probably refer that question over to him, who's used the brewery to the absolute limits and filled it right to the brim. But I've mainly been doing sort of mid-strength beers and stuff like that. And as I've been getting older, I've also been doing sort of lower alcohol beers as well. So a bit embarrassed to sort of say that, but I do a bit of that sometimes. But yeah, the malt pipe is about 20% bigger, and then we also have, because we've got the malt pipe extension, I don't know if you guys have seen this as well. So we also have this device here. So the malt pipe on the standard unit is bigger, but then we also have another even larger extended malt pipe as well. So this one is bigger again. Let me just pull this image up here. So this one's even bigger again, like that. So because these malt pipes are getting even bigger, we actually have 2 stages. So this is an add-on extra. If you want to have, even higher gravity beers, you can opt to get the additional malt pipe, which is even bigger than the standard, one, which is 20% bigger. So I can't remember what the exact literage this larger one was. But that's also an additional add-on. And then I'll just bring up this photo as well. This device here. So we did a video on this device a little while ago, the boil extender. And that's how you join on this extension on top of your standard BrewZilla, and that extends the boil volume. So that's what I was just talking about before. So
for all the listeners, we actually have them on stock. So we're only waiting for the 65, but we have all the other parts. So we will release these extension boilers for both 35 and 65. Yeah, most probably within a couple of weeks. Yep,
nice one. But yeah, one of the other things that I also want to mention was, because of this dish base as well, it gives us the ability to really more effectively CIP clean. So CIP, for those who haven't heard of it, means cleaning in place. So that's when we want to basically use a pump like this. And actually, let me just turn the screen share off again. I'll just go back to the camera here. 1 second. So CIP cleaning is when we have the brewery sitting in place, and without having to get in there and scrub everything, what we can do is use recirculating spray ball or spray jet or something like that. So typically, if somebody wanted to use a spray ball to clean something out, they'd buy one of these stainless steel spray balls, and I'm lying around the office here, but they'd buy a stainless steel spray ball, and those spray balls were made in such a way that they required really large pumps to drive them, and they're used commercially, because commercially, all the breweries have really large three-phase pumps and stuff like that. So, that's normal. But CIP in a homebrew situation was very, very hard to do, because it meant that for a brewery like this, there's not much point getting a brewery like this and then putting a huge three-phase pump into the base of it or something like that. It's just not feasible. Or even a very large single-phase pump, it's not really feasible, because it's like really too big, and you don't really need a lot of flow to recirculate the wort. So we went out on this mission a little while ago. Simultaneously, when we started the BrewZilla Gen 4 with the dish base, we also started another project to make a new type of CIP spray ball, which is very efficient at basically getting the flow through the pump, like being able to use a very low volume and low pressure pump, but still being able to throw the liquid, out of the spray jet and rotor. So, yeah, this was a lot of stuffing around, I'll say, because with flow dynamics, especially in, even if you get really good software, like, SolidWorks has some great, applications there where you can actually put liquid flow through something and see how it interacts. But when you get to the stage of actually seeing, like, chemicals throw out of a spray ball, it's something you just very, very hard to model, actually, and you just have to make it. So we spent a number of months making a lot of 3D printed parts, and then, getting them to spin. But the surface of the 3D prints is never perfect, so there's a lot of stuffing around. I spent days like sanding stuff down and trying to coat stuff with certain like I was dissolving ABS and then trying to deposit that onto the 3D prints to smooth the surface off. And, anyway, so we basically had a heap of different, models that we made of spray rotors. But what that means we can do is we can get a very efficient rotor like this, which will basically use the very small 6-watt pump. And we found, like, after we optimized these little fins on here with to throw liquid out, we found with a 6-watt pump, we could go through this spray arm and it could throw up to about 40 centimeters in diameter, which means we could even use a 6-watt pump even in like the 100-liter brewery. Not that we will, because the 100-liter brewery deserves a bigger pump. But, it means that we could, for the first time, have a very effective CIP spray system inside the brewery. So, you can just put the lid on and have this connected to the hose like that. And then it will spray and clean out the brewery itself. But one thing is, once you've got a brewery that can clean itself out, the next thing is, why don't we use the brewery to clean other stuff out as well? Because we've got something which can warm up some water, we can chuck some chemicals in. So naturally, I think what we'll start to see is people wanting to also use this type of CIP and this type of brewery to then clean out things like their fermenters. So you could basically park this next to your conical fermenter, heat up some, chemicals, PBW, or because generally most of the cleaners will work better when they're in elevated temperature, and especially in a place like Norway, I imagine the tap water is quite cold. So if you try to use a lot of the chemicals, the effectiveness will be quite low if especially if your water's only like 5-10 degrees or something like that. But you get up to say 25 or 30 degrees, that chemical reaction's like happening, a lot better. So if you're able to get a brewery like this and then use a CIP, I can swing that arm around and then, put this guy on the end and then basically use that to CIP, something else. So I think that's kind of really exciting, because CIP has always been one of those things which is really cool to have, but it hasn't really been easily accessible to a lot of home brewers. And this really simple, it's actually remarkably simple. When you see it, it's not much to it. Actually, I'll bring it up on the screen here. So I'll share screen again like this. So if you see this spray rotor, we made a number of different designs. This ended up being the most efficient. So yeah, it's got a rotating rotor like this, which spins around, and then when you see it, it just sort of looks like this when it spins around. I'll just pull this up now. Okay, so Oh, yeah. So these are the typical type of stainless steel spray jets, I suppose you might see. So that's like most of them in the market. And yeah, if we even use our large 65-watt pump, it can just make this turn slowly, but really they don't work properly. So yeah, for the small pumps that we use in the breweries, we're able to do stuff like this. And you can see that spinning there. So you can see it's sort of easily throwing out to the 40 centimeter mark. And really, you're even getting droplets out to 50 and 60 centimeters when you can see that spray ball or that spray rotor spinning. And we're getting good coverage even going upwards too. So even if you were to have the lid on the boiler, you'd be able to spray. This would be spraying back up against the inside of the lid. So, you're getting quite good coverage. So hopefully people find that they're hardly scrubbing at all. At most, you might be able to, you might have to just get a sponge and just clean the edges a little bit. But, that's kind of cool to be able to just have that add-on. If you remove the spray rotor from the jet, you can also get, we're doing some experiments with also using it as a sparging device. So I'll sort of show you this. Oh, I don't have that photo on here, actually. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But yeah, you can also use it as a sparging device because some people wanted to, I'll just switch over to the camera. Yeah, because some people wanted to actually, I've seen some people use these sort of little sprinklers or, look, I saw one guy actually get a shower head, like a conventional shower head, and then put it on top of his brewery. So it would go through a shower head and sprinkle on top of that. But actually the one device, if you just take the rotor part off like that, this actually works quite well to just fan the wort out over the malt pipe. So, you could sort of like use a double purpose device, or you could actually use it to aerate wort going into your fermenter as well. So that's another thing one guy said. So you basically use this, and instead of just pumping directly out of the hose into the fermenter, you just go like that, it fans it out and you'll aerate more once it chills down. So, it could be useful. And that's one of the reasons why I put this fairly long 1/2-inch thread on here. So it could actually be mounted. So you just get 2 1/2-inch nuts, and you could mount this to the lid of other pots as well. If you got like, let's say a 3-vessel system or something like that, you just drill a hole in there, use normal 1/2-inch nut, bang, bang, and then you can make your other pots also CIP-able. So yeah, kind of a really cool device. It'll be really cool when you can get something like, a thermometer like this, for instance, on the new generation for BrewZilla. This will work together with the BrewZilla. So the BrewZilla itself will be connected to the internet. So because it's got a mains, power plug, we've got a lot more power. So that can easily, log data up to the internet. But with the BrewZilla Gen 4, because it's logging up to the internet. So let's say we've got this guy here. Yeah, so the chips in the controller of the BrewZilla Gen 4, they're only logging the data up to the internet once every sort of 5 minutes or so. So because it's only really every 5 minutes, it takes like less than a second to just log that data up to the internet. It's got actually quite a lot of available time where it's not doing anything, logging up to the internet. It's not talking to the internet all the time. So what we can do is take use of the fact that that's got an antenna and a board there that can pick up on Bluetooth signal as well. And that way we can use these very power efficient Bluetooth beacon devices. So for instance, instead of just taking a temperature reading down the bottom of the boiler, and some people when they first start don't quite get that that's the bottom of the boiler. It doesn't necessarily mean your whole malt pipe is the same temperature. So one of the nice things about being able to use a Bluetooth probe is we can stick that into the top of the malt pipe and then get a secondary reading of the malt pipe as well. So we can get, like, it would have been very messy for us. We actually always wanted to do this, but it was very messy to do it with wires, because if you want to get a cable, you either had to take the lid off, or you had the cable in the way, and you can't have it penetrate through the side very easily, because that would stop you being able to pull the malt pipe out. So there's all these complications with doing that before, but now with wireless sort of stuff like this, it sort of makes all of that really possible. So this gives out that Bluetooth beacon, and then the actual controller will pick up on the Bluetooth beacon, package up that signal, send them both to the internet, so you can see a graph of both of them coming together. And then what we'll have is, on the controller itself, you can pass the control of turning on and off the elements onto the Bluetooth beacon signal rather than using the temperature probe at the bottom. When I say rather than, it still uses a combination of the two, because you don't want the the wort to be boiling at the bottom if the middle of the malt pipe still isn't at temperature. You sort of want to put caps on it, or what we'll say is thresholds on how far away you can have the two elements away from each other, or the two readings away from each other, if that makes sense. So that type of stuff, I think, will make the whole brewing process a lot more usable. So if you've got, for instance, a probe in the middle of the malt pipe, typically what you did is you just left it long enough that you know that the malt pipe temperature would eventually get to that temperature, and you just assume that it's there. But if you have a temperature probe in there, what you can do is ramp up the heat to the limit of that threshold that you've set in there, so it forces the temperature up faster, so you can hit that target mash temperature faster. And then when you get to that temperature, not overshoot it, because you've got a probe in there, you can then tone it down straight away. So that data wouldn't be possible unless we had a sensor right in the middle of the malt pipe, which is very, very hard, or it's more complicated and messy to do with a wire. So it's kind of really exciting. One thing I do have to clear up, though, as well, is when we talk about Bluetooth, is a lot of people, when they hear that we've got Bluetooth stuff coming out, like a Bluetooth thermometer or the RAPT pill, which is the pill which has got Bluetooth and stuff like that, they think it's about connecting with your phone and think, oh, I want to connect my phone to that Bluetooth device. That's not really our intention, because we haven't really gone out there wanting people to sit because in my opinion, it's not really that useful. Like, why would I want to sit next to the pill, the hydrometer, and have to be within 3 or 4 meters to get a hydrometer reading? That's not actually useful at all. It's basically just really annoying that I have to be so close. I want to be able to get that reading when I'm at work or away, or basically get that report up to the internet. So, we could do it. We could actually include it. We are got an app for Android and also for iPhone, which is coming out very soon, the RAPT app. The Android one's already finished, but it's not actually public. So I think we'll probably make that public very soon. And the Apple app should be approved fairly soon. So we could actually have the app pick up on a Bluetooth beacon quite easily and just put it on the screen, but it's not a huge amount of functionality that it gives you. When we talk about Bluetooth, it's really with respect to picking up on the Bluetooth signal. So devices which are powered by batteries can use much less battery, and then using one of the other hardwired devices to grab that beacon and then relay it up to the internet and do the heavy lifting of,
We got a question in regarding the RAPT system. Does it have integration with Brewfather?
That's something Thomas I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, actually. Maybe Gangsoi. Gangsoi. Yeah, sorry, that's terrible. Oh my god. So Thomas is fantastic to work with, and originally what we released an API a little while ago, and the API was just a one-way API where basically it just sends the information out, and you can go and click on it and collect it. But Thomas Gangsoi, he was like, that's quite good, but I kind of really wanted webhooks as well. So it's kind of when you use webhooks, it sort of can pull the data more efficiently. Is probably the best way to describe it in a nutshell without going too much detail. So basically we're in the process of upgrading the API to suit what Thomas Gangsoi was after, and that process should be finished quite soon. I would say within the next few weeks. I'd be surprised if that's not done.
Sweet.
But it's been well on the way, and it's been one of the most requested things. We sell a lot of Brewfather software. We recommend it to heaps of people in Australia, because I think the Brewfather software is the best out there. Anybody, you still meet the odd person who's still using like beersmithing, like, what are you doing? It's like, this is like way better.
No, you should do it like us. We do it mandatory, so we always bring out the Brewfather together with the BrewZilla.
Yeah, we bundle.
Yeah,
we bundle it.
That is probably what we should do. It should be mandatory, I reckon, because for recipe development, it just sort of, it just makes it so much easier. And he's a total genius. I love dealing with Thomas because he's fast, he's responsive, and he's on the ball. He gets stuff updated so quickly. That guy's a total legend.
Yeah, I think you really appreciate that shout out. He's smiling to you in the chat at least. He's here. You could say hi.
I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!